call meeting for Gifted Education in Second Life. This is our sixth event in this case, and today we have an invited speaker is Tim Dracup from UK, and his topic is about global gifted and talented education, the global perspective. I think it's time to give Tim to talk about himself and start. Tim?
Okay, thanks Roya, and thanks to everybody for joining us in Second Life this Saturday afternoon if you're in the United States, and Sunday morning if you're in Australia or New Zealand. And I think most of the rest of Europe is working on German time, so we should be in, or Samoa, yes, so we should be in the evening there. So just in case you're a bit confused about my identity, my real name is Tim Dracup, as you've heard. A year ago now, I took early retirement from England's Ministry of Education, where I was for many years the head of the government's Gifted and Talented Education Unit. We had a national programme in England for Gifted and Talented. Now I'm a freelance consultant, a writer, a commentator and general all-round advocate for global gifted education. I'm a trustee of the National Association for Gifted Children in the UK and part of a working group that's setting up a new UK-centred network called GT Voice, which all of you can join. And I blog and tweet and have a Facebook account, all of those things under the pseudonym Gifted Phoenix. And I appear in that guise today, really, courtesy of Roya, who created this really beautiful avatar. Just one more thing before we get seriously underway. I don't want to spend the whole time speaking if I can avoid it. So I'd really like to hear from you, either your voices or your typed comments, as often as possible, really. Feel free to interrupt me at any time, and I'll, from time to time, stop things and ask what you think, and wait a little while until I hear your responses. So off we go. Roya, if I could have the next slide, please. So I'll say which slide I need after each one, just in case they're in the wrong order. But this one is a tabular version of the very first blog post that you could find on my blog, which I wrote back in May 2010. And really, the hypothesis is that it's more or less possible to define any country's approach to gifted education by reference to these three polarities, which should all be familiar to you. The first is between nature and nurture. So at one end, a tendency towards understanding giftedness as inherited, or at the other end, as understanding giftedness as predominantly achievable through effort. And then the second polarity is between equity and excellence. So on the equity end of that polarity, a tendency to see gifted and talented as about narrowing gaps in achievement between advantaged and disadvantaged learners, and at the other end about improving academic standards for the brightest students, regardless of the background from which they come. And the third polarity between personalization and special needs. So at the personalization end of the spectrum, a tendency to see effective gifted and talented education as about tailoring learning to meet the needs of all learners, including the gifted, often in the normal classroom. And at the other end of that polarity, a preference for seeing it as really a matter of responding in pull-out provision from the normal classroom to the very different special needs and sometimes problems of gifted learners. And over the year, really, I haven't seen anything that's convinced me that these three polarities don't define national positions on gifted. I'm glad to see you didn't turn up naked, Peter. But I've also realised that they're pretty good at defining our individual positions on gifted and talented. And they're the cause of most of the disagreements that we have about gifted and talented whenever we discuss it. So tonight, your first bit of audience participation, really, I want to ask you whether you agree with me. Do you think these three polarities more or less define our positions nationally and individually on gifted education? And if you do, where would you position yourselves? Where would you position your countries and states? And if there's a difference between your personal position and your country's position, does that explain any difficulties that you have with your country's policies, if they have them, in relation to gifted education? So lots of questions, but really the general one is, do you think that this is a simple and easy way of defining very broadly our different views about what gifted education is?